TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. Israel is preparing to significantly ratchet up its battle intensity against Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the next several days. The Islamic Republic of Iran demands compensation from the United States over the obliteration of its nuclear infrastructure in exchange for resuming dialogue. The United States, along with over a dozen European nations to include Finland, Sweden, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom, among others, released a joint statement condemning Iran over attempts of Iranian intelligence services to kill, kidnap, and harass people in Europe and North America. Israel is preparing to significantly ratchet up its battle intensity against Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the next several days. The decision to intensify the war will be taken in the event that the Palestinian terror group refuses a final ultimatum to accept defeat and release all hostages that have now endured over 669 days in brutal Hamas captivity, which is currently being formulated by Jerusalem and Washington.
We are in the midst of an intense war in which we have achieved very significant, historic accomplishments because we were not divided, because we stood together and fought together. We must continue to stand together and fight together to achieve all of our war objectives, the defeat of the enemy, the release of our hostages, and the assurance that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel. Later this week, I will convene the cabinet to instruct the IDF on how to achieve these three objectives, all of them, without exception.
It is important to highlight that officials from the Prime Minister's office have revealed that Netanyahu wants the IDF to conquer the entire Gaza Strip with the aim of decisively defeating Hamas. The expanded operation will include areas in which hostages are believed to be held, a move which the IDF is said to be opposed to, fearing for the hostages' lives. It is worth mentioning that amid the expected shift in the scope and intensity of warfare against Hamas in Gaza, IDF Chief of General Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, who was scheduled to travel to Washington to meet with Pentagon officials and attend the exchange of command ceremony of U.S. Central Command, canceled his trip. Turning to Lithuania, where Israeli President Herzog concluded an official state visit, during the course of which he held an extensive meeting with his Lithuanian counterpart, President Gitanas Nausėda, and expressed Israel's unequivocal and unwavering commitment to both international law and international humanitarian law.
For nearly 2 years, the State of Israel has been fighting to bring our hostages home and restore security for all our citizens. We deeply mourn every innocent life lost. And in response to your comments, Mr. President, I want to emphasize, we are making tremendous efforts to address the humanitarian situation in accordance with international law. Just this week alone, 23,000 tons of humanitarian aid entered Gaza by means of hundreds of trucks, and hundreds of trucks are waiting to be distributed. But the United Nations has failed to do so efficiently.
The Israeli head of state continued by pushing back at an international campaign of false accusations, as he put it, which is promoted by the Islamist Hamas, emphasizing that Israel encourages more countries to assist in aid distribution in Gaza to help alleviate the suffering, which the internationally designated terror group Hamas bears full responsibility for.
We encourage and welcome humanitarian airdrops by more and more countries, and we call on all nations to join this critical effort to significantly improve the humanitarian conditions in Gaza. But we must also speak the truth. The Hamas campaign of false accusations, while it itself bears direct responsibility for the suffering of Gaza's civilians, is a blatant lie and a distortion of reality.
President Herzog also addressed the horrendous treatment of Israel's hostages by their monstrous captors in the Gaza Strip, pointing out to his Lithuanian host that the Israeli hostage Evyatar David was of Lithuanian descent.
From
here, I cry out to the world, we must not remain silent. They must all be brought home. That is the key to resolving the severe crisis in Gaza and the wider Middle East. These hostages are the victims of horrific crimes against humanity. These horrendous images are yet another chilling reminder. While Israel delivers humanitarian aid into Gaza, innocent Israelis are held underground, tortured, and stripped of all rights. This must shake the conscience of the entire world. And there is only one path forward: bring them all home.
It is important to know that later tonight, less than an hour after our broadcast of TV7 Israel News, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar is expected to attend an emergency UN Security Council meeting on the condition of the Israeli hostages in Gaza, with up to 20 out of a total of 50 believed to be alive, albeit they in dire physical and mental condition. It is also important to know that some of the hostages are dual Israeli, American, German, French, and even Canadian citizens, among others. Turning to Pakistan, where Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, during an official state visit at the invitation of Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, claimed that his country was innocent of all allegations leveled against it, and that Islamabad and Tehran are working together to convince international institutions to hold Israel accountable for the 12-day war that devastated Tehran's nuclear aspirations.
These aggressions once again revealed the necessity of coming up with a regional and global consensus against the unlawful actions of the Zionist regime. The two countries of Iran and Pakistan asked the international bodies, especially the Security Council of the United Nations, to avoid double standards and take up a more active role in preventing the aggressions against the soil and the territories of the member countries, and also the spillover of the war and encroachment against the sovereignty of the countries and the killing of the civilians. I understand, Mr. President, that what Israel did against Iran in June without any reason, without any solid cause, was strongly condemned not by me, not by my government, but by the 240 million people of Pakistan. And I believe that there was no justification for this war.
The Pakistani leader continued by insisting that Iran has a right to its nuclear program. Meanwhile, the Ayatollah regime has launched a robust campaign of disinformation throughout Europe and the United States aimed at convincing the Europeans and Americans that their respective governments are pursuing a wrong and dangerous foreign policy against an innocent Iranian regime. Among others, in an extensive propaganda piece by Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, which was published by the Financial Times, Tehran is now demanding that the U.S. must agree on compensation for its strike on Iran's nuclear infrastructure if it would like to negotiate vis-à-vis Iran's nuclear program.
Well, what I can say is that any demands for financial compensation from the United States to the Iranian regime are ridiculous. If the Iranian regime really wanted to save money or alleviate some of the sanctions policy, they would stop taking destabilizing actions. They would stop wasting money on their nuclear program. They would stop sending money to terrorist death squads across the region. They would stop oppressing their own people. So if they really wanted to save money or find a way towards prosperity for their people, they would start taking those actions. So any demands for financial compensation from the United States are ridiculous. But to stress, the United States is ready to talk with Iran. Iran has a short window of opportunity, but the ball is in Iran's court. So we're waiting to see what they do in terms of now it's in their court.
It is important to know that Iran's demands for compensation come amid a joint statement by the United States, the United Kingdom, Albania, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Czechia, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, and the Netherlands, alongside Spain and Sweden, in which they condemned the Islamic Republic of Iran for a growing number of state threats from Iranian intelligence services on their respective soils. The joint statement reads, quote, "We are united in our opposition to the attempts of Iranian intelligence services to kill, kidnap, and harass people in Europe and North America in clear violation of our sovereignty." Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. As we're faced with significant trials and tribulations today and in the days and months ahead, I would like to encourage you to pray for your leaders, pray for the hostages in Hamas captivity, and pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. Also, we are in need of your support since TV7 Israel productions are exclusively donation-based. If you're blessed by our programs and are able to stand with us, you can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.